Are these cats transgender? Experts say, yeah, probably. What's good, everyone? Today we're discussing transvestigators. Basically, a transvestigator is somebody who uses science to prove that some people are secretly trans. And by science, I mean modern day skull measuring, and by some people, I mean literally every single celebrity for some reason, including historical figures like General Douglas MacArthur, Mr. Irradiated Cobalt himself. So today, we're gonna dive into some of the worst that I could find in this community, but do keep in mind that while these people are so comically hateful to the point that they loop back around to being funny, this sort of behavior is extremely concerning, and we'll get into that a bit later. So as with everything, the absolute worst of this community congregates around Facebook and Twitter, and the primary demographic of them seem to be Gen Xers and Boomers who are deep in the conspiracy rabbit hole. Oh boy. So first of all, let's cover the conspiracy itself before we get into their posts. As I said, these people believe that pretty much every single celebrity or public figure, even as minor as the Hawk Tuah girl, are trans, or what they refer to as inverted. Sometimes they extend this logic too to people they actually know, so a lot of them will post like their neighbors and stuff on these groups, and it's really bizarre. And some even go as far to say as most people are trans. Now, why are all these celebrities trans? Is it just one big coincidence? Well, they're divided on the issue. None of them really have like a coherent worldview. What a surprise. Some people think it's a prerequisite to becoming famous, sort of like the humiliation ritual theories. And others think it's like an attack on traditional values, or attacks from like the devil himself. Like this guy refers to trans people as Baphomets. Like, what level of unemployment do you have to be on to write this sentence? How do you care this much about what other people do? And of course, trans people existing isn't just some sort of demonic plot. But seriously though, the thing I hate about this theory, other than the obvious transphobia, is for one, this theory makes zero sense. Like, okay, say all celebrities were secretly trans. Who benefits from this materially, and why should I care? I mean, it doesn't have to make sense for them though. It's really just an excuse for them to feel persecuted by the evil elite who wants to make people trans because trans people are evil or something. And for two, even if there were tons of secretly trans celebrities, anybody who's not bigoted probably wouldn't care because that's their own personal lives. And thirdly, the thing I hate about this theory, and I'll get into it more later, is that transvestigators believe that pretty much every trans person has quote-unquote markers that will show you that they are transgender. But even if this was true, and even if you could quote-unquote always tell, that doesn't matter. That doesn't make them not their preferred gender. Like, if a cis male has female traits like me with my fat ass, that doesn't suddenly make them a woman. But of course, they don't care. That's not how they think about the world. Speaking of appearances, how do they actually determine who is trans? They make shit up. Let's look at some of my favorites. Everywhere I go, I see women with no butts, big shoulders and brow ridges, men with big butts, sloping shoulders and pretty eyes. Real men and women seem scarce. I found this one absolutely hilarious for a couple reasons. First of all, this woman's standing at an angle, so the lines don't even make sense. They're trying to prove that she has like super wide shoulders, but like, if she was standing straight up, it'd probably look pretty like uniform. And not only that, but they artificially shortened the hip lines and lengthened the shoulder ones past the borders. And they did the opposite for the guy just to prove their point. They're just making shit up. It's so funny. Like, wow. Could it be that maybe masculine and feminine traits have a lot of overlap and you can't tell someone's assigned gender at birth just by their traits? No, obviously that just means real men and women are scarce. Heavy on the quotes. Hold up. Okay, if you're not looking at the screen right now, this is a direct quote from them. These are not my words. I'm not trying to claim trans people are not real men or women. Alright, resume. And the way they worded it just cracks me up. Like, dude, the women in my town got no ass. Just no cake. And the dudes, though, they are double cheeked the fuck up, and they got pretty eyes. Like, are we even talking about trans people anymore? Like, bro got distracted halfway through typing this. Now, as you just saw, it's quite common for people to just look at, like, perfectly typical proportions and be like, oh, see? Case in point. This post just kind of speaks for itself. It's obviously not very masculine like the last one. As you can see, again, they shortened the hip lines. And honestly, I don't even really like debunking these that much. I mean, it has to be done, but it's like, I really don't like having to boil down someone's gender to their physical traits, especially because there's so much variation among those traits, and argue down at their level. And I'm pretty sure the original person in the picture was a cis woman. I couldn't find the account. But even if the person who drew this was right, and this was a picture of a trans woman with super masculine features, who cares? That's still a woman regardless of what she looks like. And the transvestigators only care about proving this stuff because they already don't like trans people. Their logic is trans people bad, this person is secretly trans, therefore they're bad and you should hate them. But on a serious note, like what level of unemployment do you have to be on to make these pictures? We are reaching levels of unemployment never before seen. How bored do you have to be to draw lines on other people's pictures to be like, oh, See? And I didn't even touch on the elephant in the room. Like, they drew the leg lines purposely wrong to show that they're like more narrow. Like, look, they followed the curve and then they like went back in because they knew that their point would be totally void if they showed where the legs actually were. And then he replied, oh yeah, this is because of HRT damage. Breaking news, transitioning turns you into a pair of parentheses. You know what else is transitioning though? That subscribe button from unclicked to clicked. Now, probably one of the most alarming tests they use is literal skull measuring. If you have to resort to 18th century race science to prove your point, you are probably wrong right off the rip. Here's one method that I find hilarious, where they just overlay pictures of male and female skulls over people. But the hilarious thing to me is that these skulls don't even match up. Like, they're incorrectly sized and placed, so that just tells me the skull diagrams are wrong. Like, here's an actual picture of a male and female skull, and the differences really aren't that crazy. Not to mention, skulls can be used to determine what a skeleton was, but most of the time it's not definitive. They will say a skeleton is likely male or likely female because there's so much variation and overlap between the traits. But dumbass69 on Twitter is just like, oh dude, these PNGs that I incorrectly overlaid onto these celebrities in one single picture prove everything. Again, I feel like I have to keep stating this, but even if they're right and that these people were both secretly trans, who cares? They're not hurting anybody, and the only reason they take issue with this and want to try to prove this is because they are transphobic. Side note, but I really feel like transvestigators view gender differences like how animators do when they're making like wolf movies. This is the boy wolf, and this is the girl wolf. But transvestigators don't really view anything in a sane way though, to be honest. I'm also struggling with what to watch now. Same here. It's hard to watch TV and enjoy the plot. I find myself analyzing skeletal structure and thinking what a con it all is. I certainly don't worship celebs anymore. How do you live like this? And another thing I want to say is that, like, dude, again, how is it a con? Like, even if this was true, how would it be a con? Who is benefiting from this? Like, on the bright side though, at least transvestigators are consistent in their hate. Like, this dude transvestigated himself. Well, more accurately, he took a blood test to tell if he was intersex. Because they're also not a big fan of intersex people because they believe them to be, like, deceivers. What? And it's usually in the context of sports. And it's part of that whole, like, biological men in women's sports. As if dudes are just chomping at the bit to transition just so they can maybe win at sports. It's starting to derail a bit, but J.K. Rowling's one of the people who push this the most. And I don't know if you've seen this, but she just posted a picture where she has black mold growing up her walls. And that might be the funniest smoking gun I've ever seen. The writers of this season of Earth are going crazy. We've all watched this beloved children author turn into a transphobic weirdo, to the point that people are getting their Harry Potter tattoos covered up just because she's gotten so gross. And then we finally get a picture of her house, and there's like a huge infestation of black mold on her walls. And if you don't know, black mold is very often known to like severely affect your mental state, especially if you live in it for a while. Like, that is a crazy plot twist. And don't get me wrong though, she's 100% responsible for her own hateful rhetoric. I'm mostly joking about the mold. I just find it hilarious to imagine the mold is just controlling her like the Green Goblin suit, or those bucket guys from SpongeBob. Post the tweet, Joanne. But before we move on to the truly serious stuff, I want to point out that a ton of these people are lazy as hell and they don't even put a lot of effort into what they're doing. Like, this one just says, Susan B. Anthony. Dude. Like, come on, you can put more effort into it than that. And some of them are just downright hilarious and make zero sense. Like this one comparing school in the 2000s to school in the 90s. But seriously, how does this prove the trans agenda? Like, oh dude, the kids, they used to be so good at dancing, and then the damned HRT took away their moves. It's so over, guys. And let me tell you something, random Facebook poster. The 90s kids in that video, yeah, they're trans too. You're not even close to the bottom of this. You don't unlock that knowledge till you've joined your 10th Transvestigation Facebook group, some of which have tens of thousands of members. It's honestly ridiculous. Speaking of these Facebook groups, dude, the moderators of these groups are so funny. Like, this dude spends this entire time writing poetry. Bulging round muscles on a tiny female frame. Yes, Tyson's a word. Okay, I'm not gonna say this word because although nobody really recognizes it as a slur, this is basically their replacement for other slurs. Like, in their rules, they tell you, hey, use this word so we don't get banned. So it's basically the same thing. All celebs are the same. God never made nipples to point to the floor. She's got female biomarkers. I'll give you some more. Bars. She has a female pelvis and arms like a T-Rex. Here's my transvestigation, because of your dumbass Lex. At everyone. Man, don't you just love when you finally have time to record after a busy week, and the sun comes directly into your room like a fucking space laser? Isn't this awesome? Did I just get beamed up to heaven? Like, what the hell is going on? So as I was saying, who the hell is Lex? What did he do to get this poem written about him? Like, is there really beef in the transvestigation community? Of course there is. So what happens a lot within this community is that they'll transvestigate each other, because again, that's the sort of environment they've made. Like, oh boo-hoo, you're being transvestigated? Well, you've been doing that to other people for years now, so deal with it, I guess. But so the creator of this group is called Inanna Snow. But yeah, so Inanna Snow frequently gets transvestigated. Her #1 white knight moderator keeps writing poems trying to defend her, and they're amazing. In a sea of words, she stands alone, making a better world for us to call home. Every other influencer you will find is a demon-infested word of the shilly kind. Once again, at everyone, David just needs everybody to see his 7th grade level poetry. Like, I'm sorry, but I think he's got a little crush here. Like, brother, she stands alone making a better world for us to call home. I kind of want to see like a romance show between them. Like, could you imagine being a fly on the wall during one of their dates? Man, where's the waiter with our food? Up. Waitress. Also, I found it hilarious that one of the only people they claim are actually cis is one of the moderators of this group. Like, wow, it's really funny how that works. Now, as you've seen by now, these people are so stupid that they seem unthreatening. At least to me, because I'm not trans, so I'm able to, like, abstract myself from their hate, as I don't really have to deal with the consequences of it. But as I was saying, this sort of behavior is extremely serious, as they often get up to just some diabolical behaviors. 2 girls I was at uni with. Straight, broad shoulders on the left one, and look at the neck on the right one. They are everywhere. Ah yes, these 2 girls were everywhere. Check your friends. Check your children's friends. What do you mean, check your children's friends, you predator? These are the people saying trans people are predators too. Does the irony never dawn on them? Out at a children's play area, and I feel very much in the minority. The other parents are trans. The kids are trans. The staff are trans. I hate this effed up world. Well, for one, I don't think you should be near children's play areas, based on your previous statements. And for 2, that's the worst part about conspiracy theories that rely on, like, the mass deception thesis. Like, there's no way this many people are in on it and haven't told you yet. It's like the moon landing conspiracy. There's no way everybody who's ever been in NASA or the government hasn't blown the whistle yet. This is like getting close to genuine psychosis. And I can't believe that these people are just out walking around thinking that there's just some demonic plot going on all around them that they have to stop. That is so concerning, and I really hope that none of them act on their beliefs. Although I'm sure it's already happened. And this behavior actually gets worse and even more invasive rather than just in the abstract. So this person actually posted a picture of their neighbors claiming that they're all men. Someone asked, whose family is this? And he's just like, local creepy family. Which, on a side note though, I love this post because he words it like one of those really bad 2-sentence horror stories from Reddit. A new family just moved in from across the street. It was the creepy family. But on a serious note, it's really disgusting watching people extend this behavior to people they know. Like, it's already bad enough doing it to celebrities and public figures, but posting people who aren't public figures on these websites to have their bodies analyzed to assess whether they're secretly evil trans demons or not is so concerning. And this is just people's moms doing this, bro. Like, you'll go on these things, it's just a bunch of boomers. Like, is this what people do after retirement? Do they just go crazy like this? Like, what's going on? And again, this behavior isn't just confined to the internet. Someone in my comments once pointed out that they were closeted as trans and they have to listen to their family all the time who aren't even in like the transvestigator rabbit hole out loud speculate about whether their neighbors are trans. And honestly, if I was trans, I'd feel really unsafe around these people, even just knowing they exist. Speaking of me though, I did have one instance of being transvestigated, although it wasn't that serious. In my first video, I mentioned that I'm a cis male as a setup for a joke, and this absolute philosopher in the comments is just like, cis. Like, buddy, you suck. But it's not because you tried transvestigating me, it's because you didn't go the whole 9 yards. I want a full report in my email. I wanted to measure my Q angle, I wanted to measure my brow ridge, and I want it to be as unhinged as possible. And I want it done by tonight, or your Twitter privileges are revoked. The final thing I want to point out though is that I see a lot of people incorrectly arguing against transvestigators. Like, your point shouldn't be to argue at their level using their methods. Like, if someone's all like, oh, X actor has a female jawline or something, your point shouldn't just end at, no, it's clearly a male jawline. Your point should be, for one, there's variation in these traits, and for 2, it doesn't matter. Even if they were right and somebody is secretly trans, that is not their business and it doesn't matter. That doesn't suddenly make their identity invalid. But don't get me wrong though, like, these tests absolutely should be debunked because that gives them even less legitimacy than they already had. Hold up, I lied, that was not the last thing. My pants are in flames right now. I have 2 more things to say. First of all, thank you all so much for 10,000 subs. I'm not gonna lie, I'm kind of tripped out because, like, I didn't even expect to get like 100 on this account and I was kind of scared to even try. So it's really cool that after 2 months we're already at 10k. That's kind of nuts, bro. That's kind of balls, dude. And the second order of business is that, sorry this video took so long to come out. I've been really busy with football lately. Speaking of which, if you want to donate to my college football team, I put a link to the fundraiser in the description. So yeah, thank you all so much for the support. It's been absolutely bonkers, and later.